Today I'm going to talk about an adaptive card extension where we can display daily insight with OpenAI API. This was one of the sample which I had collaborated and developed with Kunj also. So before I start the demo, a little bit about myself. I'm Siddharth Vaghasia. I am Microsoft MVP and I love working on SharePoint, Teams app development, Power Platform, etc. I'm an active contributor in PnP wherein I've contributed various SPFX samples, Teams app samples, and sample script, etc. Uh, I would also like to introduce Kunj, who has collaborated with me. He is also a technical consultant and an expert in SharePoint Office 365. He is also an active PnP contributor, and these are some of the social handles through which you would be able to connect with him. So as I said, I'm going to talk about adaptive card extension to display daily insights based on ChatGPT OpenAI API. This is the URL to the repo where this sample has been contributed. So it started with an kind of an idea on wherein when the Open API, ChatGPT Open API started appearing, people were finding different use cases, different ways to explore the Open API. So this was one of my driving factor wherein I thought, let me just see what we can do with the Open API. Ideally, we thought of having something wherein we can kind of create an adaptive card extension, which would use ChatGPT or OpenAI API to get the response and display them in the format, right? So the another driving factor is, like if we can make some use case out of it, it would be great. So what we did was we started with some prompt engineering to use the ChatGPT to see what kind of response it is giving. So we started with some of the prompts like, if they can give us fact of the day, if they can give us quote of the day, and programming tip or grammar tip, which we will see. And so we thought we can use this prompt engineering to make something usable wherein rather than asking the user to send something to the Open API, if we can basically go and pre-configure that prompt in our code and then make the request and then get the response back. So in terms of summary, this adaptive card extension solution can be configured to show different kinds of things. Like you can get quote of the day, you can get fact of the day, tip of the day, what has happened in today in the history, grammar tip, motivational words. So these are some of the prompts which are done. In terms of configurable options, we have an option to configure the API key, which is basically the OpenAI API key. Then you would be able to select different prompts and categories based on which the adaptive card extension would make the API call, get the response, and put it in the quick view format. You can also specify maximum token. This is very important because of the OpenAI rate limit. You know how much tokens you wanted to use for a particular request. For that, you would be able to configure it if you want, 250 tokens or 500 tokens to be used while it is returning the response. You can also configure the card title and description. This is basically in the card view. Now to kind of save some API request or some rate limit, what we have tried to implement is we have tried to implement this session storage so that once the API request has been made, we are storing that particular response in the local storage so that we are not making that API call again and again for that particular user. And then we also have a way for us to navigate to a next response. So if we want to get a next quote of the day or next fact of the day, then we gives an ability for user to basically navigate using next button from where they would be able to get the next response. And we have limited it to 5 to save basically the request. Now, a statutory warning kind of, though this is a sample and we are using and calling the Open API from the client side as in sample, but it is not advisable to do it because your API key would be exposed to anybody who can use the network tab. So don't use this sample as in production, but try to create a middleware using Azure function or some server-side APIs through which you would be able to do similar kind of usages. Okay, with that, let us go to the demo. So I had added this adaptive card extension here. So this is the one which we are talking about today. And if you see, it says, card title and card description. And once you click on explore, it will just basically give you the quote of the day. What you can do is you can click on next and you can get the next quote of the day. Also, this is what I was talking about for you to easily navigate and get next quote of the day for the user, right? In terms of configurable options, so if we go here and if we edit it, so this is the maximum token, this is the API key, then which kind of model we are using to get the ChatGPT. So it is also configurable. And then these are the different prompts. So right now what we have seen was quote of the day. But if you need something like programming tip, meditation tip, health tip, life hack, that can also be done. And then what we want to display in the card primary text and card description, which is here. If you don't put anything, by default, it will show you your daily insights, and also it will say you to click to explore the quote of the day, where this quote of the day is dynamic based on the prompt being selected. So let's try to see probably programming tip. I'll just select it. I'll republish it. Let me refresh it once. So yeah, so it says a coding tip: when writing a code, use meaningful variable names. This will help you to make code easier to read and understand, right? And then again, you can click on next. So based on this, you would be able to use this adaptive card extension to give some customized daily insights to the user in your Viva Connection dashboard using ChatGPT OpenAI API. Okay, so now let me go to the code to do code walkthrough. So it is a typical adaptive card extension. We have one card view and one quick view. And other than that, whatever we are doing, we are just using and dynamically replacing the content within the card view. First, let's start with the property pane configuration. So if you see here, these are the configurable properties which are available, including model, maximum token, API key, etc. One thing which we have to understand is the prompts. Okay, so basically, this is kind of an key value pair of the prompts and the actual text which we are sending to OpenAI. This for some of them it might be very similar, but just to make it in human readable format, some of them are changed. Like for example, grammar tip. The text to be displayed is grammar tip of the day. Motivational wisdom is motivational quote. So this is how kind of a simple prompt engineering we have used using ChatGPT to see what kind of responses it is getting based on what prompts we are sending to the OpenAI. So this is the kind of the response. This is the kind of the prompts which we are sending. Then let's come to the adaptive card extension. So this is where you have all the properties which are been set. Then in the extension, we have a state object wherein we are setting the insight, which is basically a string which is returned from the response. Then we have an error. If there is any error, to handle the error. And then there is a next counter, which is the number. On init method, it is a very similar init method where we are registering the card view and the quick view. This is the setup code which comes when you are creating an adaptive card extension. And then in init method, we are loading the data, right? So load data is the method which is basically doing all the magic of calling the OpenAI. If your API keys and everything is are not configured, what it will do is it will just give you kind of an error saying there's a missing configuration. So please check with the admin. In terms of storage, we are getting the data from the storage key. If we find something, we are using that as an insight so that if the user is clicking again or if user is refreshing, it gives you the same insight which has loaded to save the request. If not, we are making an API. So basically we are using completion API where we are passing the API key as in bearer token. And once we have that, we are passing model, we are passing the prompt, we are passing the temperature also based on how much accurate we need the response to be, and then the maximum token. Once we have the data, we are just setting the state to set it up in the insight and then putting it in the session storage. Now, next we are in the card view. So card view is very simple. The primary text and the description. What we have is we have the primary text. If it is configurable, then it will show it from the configurable property. If not, it will just display by default, daily insight and click explore to view the category which has been selected. So this is how the description is made dynamic. Then what we have is we have one button which is basically which will load the quick view. And on card selection, we are just sending user to ChatGPT. This is just to make sure that user knows that if they want, they can use ChatGPT for here. Next, if you go to quick view, so quick view in the data part, what we have is we have basically, sorry. So what we have is we are having insight, we have category, and we have the next counter, right? And this data is passed to the quick view template JSON, which we'll see in a while. But basically, it's just in pure text which has been returned from the response. Now, on click of next, what we are doing is we are again calling it. Again, as this was a sample, this can be added into a proxy or a service provider class and can be used from there, but ideally we just put it here for the simplicity of the sample. Again, we are calling the API, getting the next data and setting the state object to the choices which we got from the API, and then we are setting the same insight in the local storage key. So this is when the user clicks on the next button. Then in the template method, we are loading the template JSON. Template JSON is very basic. What it has is it has simple text block on top where we are showing the category. Then the text blocks where we are showing the insights, which is basically the response which we got from the OpenAI. And then we have the button, which will only be displayed if the counter is less than 5. So after 5, it won't display the counter. So yeah, that's it from the demo and from the code side. And as I said, this is a kind of a sample solution to explore the ChatGPT, but an use case can be used for us to use this in the Viva Connection dashboard to create an adaptive card extension using OpenAI. That's it from my side also, Hugo.
Thank you. And it's worth pointing out that Siddharth actually was a last-minute replacement for our speaker, so thank you for jumping in and doing an awesome presentation. The other thing to point out is the code sample that Siddharth is showing uses Code Tour, which is something that allows you to walk through the code yourself, which is what Siddharth used today. Some of our samples actually use Code Tour. If you are interested, we posted the link in the chat.